So for this video, we are going to be trying to make some edible glitter. I am doing this for really doing some testing for a cupcake order that I have in the summer. So I'm looking for a pink that's not quite readily available for glitter. So I need some glitter for the design, and I haven't been able to find a glitter that matches the color just yet. And so the whole reason for me doing this video is really because I am trying to create a glitter that's going to match the cupcakes that I need to make for this order. So you'll see me making two different colors of glitter, and I'm going to be doing a technique that I recently saw on another YouTube channel, and it's new for me, but evidently this is something that other YouTubers have done, and I just wanted to try it and see if it's something that will work for me. And so we'll go through the process, and then at the end I'll share what my thoughts are about how it works out. So let's go. We'll walk through the video. Okay, so as you can see, I am using 133 Maroon in Americolor, and I am going to be putting one drop of three different colors in this shallow glass dish. So there's the first drop. The next color is 132 Soft Pink in Americolor. And then the final color is going to be in 154 Blush, also in Americolor. So again, I'm going to put one drop of each of these into this shallow dish. And then I'm going to add about a cup of hot water into this dish. My next goal is really going to be to dissolve all of the color that I just put into the dish. I'm going to stir it up and do the best I can to really blend all of that together. I will find later in this video that I did not fully blend it, but that's okay. But I guess the goal really is to kind of blend it as best as I can. I wonder if it would have turned out differently, but you'll see that I'm using Blue Dragon spring roll wrappers, and I'm going to take one for the sake of testing. I would probably use more for this if I was actually going to be using these for outcome for a cake. But again, I'm just doing some testing to see if I like this process and if it's going to work for my cake. So I'm going to push this into the colored water, and I'm going to let it in there for about a minute. It doesn't take long for the color of this to soak into this rice paper, which was really surprising and nice for me. So you'll see that I'm wearing some gloves so I don't get it on my hands. So if you look, I mentioned that I did not dissolve all of it. You can see some darker spots on the rice paper itself. That won't hurt anything, but the goal is really to be able to use all of the rice paper. I'll pull those pieces out later. What I'm doing right now is I'm trying to separate the pieces, and you'll see in a little bit, but I'm trying to spread them out flat. And I'm putting them onto parchment paper. So again, I am pulling them out of the water with gloved hands and keeping them flat and putting them onto parchment paper. And I have all of that sitting on a cookie sheet so that they can dry overnight so that I can do the next step. And you'll see what that looks like in a few minutes. You can see I'm just trying to flatten it a little bit more. It won't hurt it if it's not completely flat, but it does take longer to dry if these aren't completely flat. So now that I have these out, you'll notice that I will be, this is what it looks like. And I'm going to dump the water out. I'm starting the next one, and I'm using Sunnyside Bakery Gold. And again, I'm putting one drop. And I'm also using that AmeriColor Soft Pink number 132 again to try this second color that I'm testing. As I had mentioned earlier, I'm just testing to see what colors I can get and see if I can get close to the color I need for the order that I have in the summer. Taking another cup of water and adding it so I can, again, try to dissolve those colors. And once again, I will take another sheet of that rice paper, and once this is dissolved, I will break it up and put it into this water. And here you'll see me doing that. Doesn't matter what those pieces look like. I had to tear it in this part of the video. Just as long as it's fully submerged. And this is what that looks like, soaking in the water. After a minute or a minute and a half, I'm going to start pulling that out like I did for the first batch. Again, I'm just trying to spread that out so it's flat as I can get it to be. And again, once I finish spreading these out, I'm done with this water. I will just dump that out and I'll be finished with the bowl for this process. And this is what it looks like with the two separate colors. I have the darker on the top two and then the lighter in the bottom. So now this is 2 days later. I had left it dry. It took longer than I expected. You'll see that I'm taking out some of those darker areas that I had did not let dissolve. But I'm just pulling them out so it doesn't taint the color that I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to be putting these dried, hardened pieces of rice paper into a food processor, and I'm going to just kind of push them down, and I'm going to let them process for about a minute or a minute and a half to try to get them to break down into a glitter type substance. I will mention that one of the things that I saw as I was watching other YouTube channels in the comments was that someone mentioned that rice paper is more savory as opposed to sweet like typical edible glitters. And that is one of the solutions to that was to add sugar to the water once you add it to the color. And that is one solution that people suggested to do. I chose not to do that because, again, I am really just testing the colors and to see like the consistency of what this edible glitter is like. So again, I just kind of took off the lid and to check to see what that looked like and decided I wanted to process this a little bit further. I do think that since I only used one sheet of the rice paper, that it made it a little bit difficult to process this in the processor. If there was more in the food processor, I think it would have processed this a little bit finer, more like an edible glitter, as opposed to this more coarse type of glitter, if you will. After I processed it, you'll see I took the blade out, and for the sake of showing this to you, I dumped it into this bowl, and you can see me just kind of touch it a bit, so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. I didn't do a real good job of kind of showing this to the camera. So here I am getting ready to, I did clean out the food processor, and now I'm adding the next color into the bowl so we can do the same again for this color. So putting the lid back on and processing again for about a minute or a minute and a half to try to get this to a fine glitter type substance. So I was mentioning there not being very much in the food processor. One of the things I did as I was watching this go through the processor was I was kind of tipping the food processor to the right and to the left. And I was doing that to kind of try to get it to hit the blade in different ways. I do think that this would have been a little different if there was more to process in the food processor. One thing that I will say that I'm not a huge fan of in this process is that it did not get as fine as I would have liked it to be. In the future, I would do more rice paper for each color. I think that would help make it more fine to be put onto the cake, and I think that would be really important, at least for it to meet my specific needs in the way I would want it to be. I did let this one go a little bit longer because I wanted to try to get this a little bit more fine than the first color. And again, for the sake of showing the camera, I took the blade out and dumped it into this bowl so you could take a peek. And you can see, hopefully, that this one is a little bit more fine than the other. I did let this one run a little bit longer than the first color. So now that I have completed the testing that I did, and we walked through the video and I showed you each of the steps that I did throughout the process, I wanted to share some of the pros and cons that I see throughout the process. So first off, I want to start with the pros. First of all, I think one of the best things about this is that there's freedom in the colors that you can get from this process. So, you know, we can always find colors like yellow or not even really yellow, but like gold and silver and some of those more traditional glitters for our cakes. But it's hard to find some of those more specific cake edible glitters that we might want to tailor our designs around. So I think that that's one of the biggest pros of this whole process. I think one of the others, of course, is going to be the cost. So it's probably like $3 or $4 for a very small container of edible glitter. And if you wanted to use a lot of glitter for a very big design on a cake, that can get pretty costly. So, you know, in doing something like making edible glitter through rice paper, I think that this clearly is going to be much cheaper to use for bigger designs. But you know, I also wanted to cover some of the cons, and there are some cons to this, and I did want to talk about those and be transparent, at least from my perspective. So, you know, I think one of the things right off the bat is that, you know, it is a savory product. And so I did not add the sugar. I did mention that that was a solution that some people use. I did not do that. So when I tasted it, it was, I wouldn't even say it's savory, but it's not sweet. And so since we're putting it on a cake, that might be really important to someone. And so that's just something to be mindful of. Another thing to be mindful of is how you might need to make a lot to make sure that as it's going through the food processor that it gets fine enough for it to truly feel like and to act like an edible glitter. As you looked at the first of the two colors that I did, the first one was really kind of coarse and not very fine. If that was something that you were trying to achieve, more course design, that would be perfect. For my own personal preference, I prefer a more fine glitter. So I think that I would have to make a lot of each color if I was going to be using this. So I don't know if that's a con per se, but if I only needed a little bit, I would have to make a lot so that it processed better in the food processor to make it more fine. So that could be a con. Another thing is, when I first started this process, and it may not be a con, it may just be that I didn't spread it out as long. I thought that it would take only 1 day for the rice paper to dry. It did end up taking 2 days, so I had to leave it rest overnight for 2 days for it to be dry enough for me to put it into the food processor. Maybe not a con. As long as you plan ahead, that's not a big deal. One thing I did want to mention is in the video, it's not really easy to tell that it is a shiny outcome. It does look like glitter if it's fine. More glitter-like, like small enough. So I did want to mention that because it's not as easy to see that in the video. So that's some of my thoughts about this process. It is something that I will probably use in the future. I would say that I don't absolutely love this process just because of those few cons that I mentioned, but it's definitely something that if I really find it important that I have the right color, that I will use this process in the future. So I just want to thank you for watching this video and for really just taking the time to see if this is something for you, and if this is something that you're interested in. Feel free to share this with someone else that you might find that you think might be interested in this as well. And I would love it if you come back to my channel and join me for another video at another time.